It's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you. In my short comments this morning, I've decided to divide the talk into the current situation. We're going to tell a little bit about what the status of PRRS is. That was one of the things I was asked to do. Then we wanted to go into some of the things that producers can do to help themselves manage this. And I thought what I would do is take several different examples of some of the recent research that has been going on and explain how that is being used by some producers and some systems to help manage the problem. And then I wanted to take a few minutes to investigate some of the opportunities that I think we see coming forward here as in managing and controlling PRRS. So the current situation, the current PRRS situation, we're going to start both regionally and then nationally. Since I'm the coordinator for the North 212 PRRS Elimination Project, we'll start with that. This is the map that we've got, our current map of the situation, and you'll see that there are basically 4 different areas. We got northern Minnesota. Green is negative. This is pretty well spread out, so that's one area. And it's pretty low-dense swine population, so that helps things quite a bit. We've got an area right here around rice that has stayed pretty close to negative. And then we've got the Stevens County area, which was the beginning of the project right now. And that's, right now it's pink. It's, many of you have heard about some of the situation. I'll go over that in a little bit more detail as we get into the talk. Right now that is a stable vaccinate. So we've gone from an elimination situation to a stable vaccinate, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. And then the last area that we've got written down here is in the Candy, High, Renville area. It's still purple for the most part, but it's and we still need some more producer involvement in that area. We'd really like to see that, but that's the color that we've got there. Just to give you a little progress report, this is where we are with the North 212 project, and if you look and just compare these numbers, this is where we were a year ago, this is where we are now. We got about 870 sites, 567 of them are signed participation agreements where they're willing to share their status. We've got actually fewer positive sites than we had at the beginning of the year, which I think is encouraging. Way more stable vaccinates than we've had, mainly because of what was happening in the Stevens County area. Also increasing the number of negative sites. We've identified some empty sites, but we still have about 300 that we have to identify to try to find out what their status is. So if we look at Stevens County, where the project began, back when Spencer Wayne was beginning with it, and then Cesar Corzo and myself in 2010. Blue was unknown at the time. Red is positive. And so the county was positive and unknown in 2004 when they started it. Then it progressed on to, in 2006, it became more green, which is negative. A lot more, the herd closure system was going on. And still a few red. And here we were in January 2012, we had the thing pretty well eliminated from the area as far as we knew. And then early in 2012, we had one outbreak in a system, but it was quite mild clinically, and so not a lot of pig losses, but it was a wake-up call. And then in the beginning of 2013, we had several severe outbreaks with several different sequences that were identified, and that was a real setback. But since then, the situation looks like this is 2014, and we've got it pretty much narrowed down now to where it's stable vaccinate. We have a little bit of field strains that are still present that we know of, but by and large it's stable vaccinate. Just to look at the Candy, High, Renville area, and if you look closely, you know, there's a lot of purple here, which is the unknown and not necessarily participants. But if you compare this area to what it is now, there is more green. We've had a number of the producers and systems that are in there that have started to put in filtration systems. So we're producing a lot more negative pigs in the area. And those pigs are going into finishing sites then, and the decision that is made whether or not to vaccinate on placement is made a lot of times based on the location and relative situation to other sites. So that's where we're taking advantage of this. When we look at it nationally, I talked to Steve Toussaint, who's willing to share this information. Many of you have seen this. This is the incidence of new infections. And if you'll notice, for the last 4 years, this is a powerful study that's been done with over 1 million sows in many different systems. And the second week in October, for the last 4 years, we've broken the line where it's become epidemic. And this is the 5th year. The good news with this year is that it was delayed by 3 weeks. So this is November 6th when it broke the line. And so that's, I think, far more encouraging than what we've had in the past. We're hoping, of course, that it's not going to get as high and it's going to be of shorter duration. So nationally, I think we're making a little bit of progress. This also shows the yellow line that's hard to see is this year, but that means that the cumulative incidence is lower than it's been in other years. I don't know if it's because people are more concerned about the PED, so their biosecurity has improved, or what the deal is. But it's good news. So, the future impact. The PRRS is still there, but I think there is some hope, and this is what I'd like to leave you with, is why is there some hope for this? I think a big part of it is producers and systems that are using some of the applied research that are there, they're applying it to their systems, is where we're going to have to go to try to implement this. First study, I got about 4 studies just to share quickly. This one was presented by ISU at Iowa, and it was just the influence of PRRS virus alone, not on any other impact on grow finish. Now this is just grow finish. This is not nursery to finish, this is grow finish. Reduced growth rate 20%, reduced feed intake by 7%, feed efficiency 15%. The cost is $14 a head, which is about twice what was previously expected. But this is the thing that amazed me the most, is that it extended the finishing period by 25 days. This, I think, is critical that we want to pass this message on to our grower herds, the producers that are just filling feedlots. They tend, as a group, not to participate as much in our programs because it's just one turn, it's a new group of pigs. Independent people maybe are more guilty of just taking a cheaper pig. But the message I think that we want to do, that we want to tell people, is that this is expensive even in grow finish. And it reinforces the value of placing a negative pig. So the next couple of slides I'd like to do revolve around Daniel and Harris's study, where he was talking about herd elimination projects. And during this study, he compared using live virus inoculation with modified live vaccination as the procedure to expose during the load, close, and expose part of the elimination. And he compared total time to negative and total time to baseline production, and then he made some observations on standard testing protocols. And the standard testing protocol is the one that I'd like to address first. What he found, the bottom line, is that we need to be more aggressive in monitoring our herds during herd closure. The typical position was that we'd take 30 samples from weaned pigs, and we'd continue to do that monthly for 4 months. If we got 4 negative tests, we assumed we were negative. Daniel found out that this was not necessarily the case. We need to be more aggressive in our testing if we're going to be confident, mainly because the prevalence within a herd is much less than 10%, and that still can cause a risk. So, using that, the Pipestone Vet Clinic has done some of this. Gordy has helped coordinate a lot of this. But they have intensified their herd closure monitoring to include 30 pigs, but at 2-week intervals, and then followed by 60 pigs sampled at 2-week intervals, and then in between times they're collecting rope samples, and then they're following up with the monthly testing and the introduction of naive sentinels. And they found by using this much more intensive approach that they've had a far greater response rate and improvement in actually managing a herd closure successfully. This is another one that's based on Daniel and Harris's work, and it was presented by Clayton Johnson and of the Mastroff system. And I thought this was pretty neat because what they're doing is they're identifying best practices and then incorporating those into every system. So if they get a break in their sow herd, they have chosen that the exposure method is going to be modified live virus over live virus inoculation. Because on this study, they found out that there was a shorter total time to baseline production. So baseline production returned to normal faster using modified live, even though it took a longer total time to negative. And they calculated also that the modified live is the better economical choice. So this is the plan based on best practices that they're going to use throughout their system. Another thing that I thought was particularly interesting about his use of this information is that they calculated out what the break point, the big decision, should we continue to just control or should we go ahead and eradicate, completely eliminate the virus. So they took this information and they put it into an algorithm and calculated out, and their conclusion was if your past frequency of outbreaks is greater than 3 years, if you have a new outbreak of a new situation more than 3 years, it pays to eradicate. If their system happens with a new outbreak in less than 3 years, you're probably better off to control and maintain a vaccination status. So this is something that our Stevens County producers are going to have to grapple with now coming up this next year in deciding which direction they want to go. I wanted to mention BioPortal. This is a real powerful real-time mapping system that includes data analysis. And I mention it because Andres Perez is one of the individuals out at UC Davis who was very instrumental in making this system work in an agricultural system. And he was recruited now to the University of Minnesota. He just started this week, and I visited with him by email. And he's very interested in including this PRRS and PED as part of a mapping system. So I'm hoping that our North 212 project can be coordinated with some of the work that he's planning to do at the university. It's based on shared information. So this is a takeaway message that I'm really encouraging producers and veterinarians to work with. One final study is the packing plant study that is probably going to be mentioned at the PED. Paul Yeske and others did this with a National Pork Board grant, and some of you probably heard about it. But at these packing plants, they tested the trucks on arrival. 17% of them were positive on arrival, and another 11% of the negative ones left positive. So that means that 1/3 of the trucks that leave packing plant are going to be positive for PED. What happens to PED, I'm sure the PRRS virus is tagging along as well. The good news about this is it prompted a long overdue discussion about best practices at swine collection points. And this is in the works, and figuring out ways to allow the driver to not have to get in and out of the cab 6 times to deliver a group of pigs. Big deal. They're talking about side entry trailers and line of separation at these places. So it's opened the discussion, and I think that's really critical. So what's been the progress? We've delayed the incidence of new infections nationally. There's been some recovery in Stevens County. I think there's still some value in these regional control projects. There's still about 30 of them that are going on nationally. And a big hope, I think, is we're trying to change the attitude and modify the attitude about sharing information. I really like the David Horsugger's presentation that we made earlier today, and this is a nice follow-up because one of his tenets was to cooperate. And I think that is one of the biggest things that for a successful industry, if we can cooperate and communicate together, we can make big strides. So the opportunities quickly in 2014, we're looking at including PED in our reporting system. The mapping system is set in place. We just have to have producers willing to share their information. I've talked to University of Minnesota. I can get some automatic downloads so we can get the information out to producers more quickly. Once they give us a premises ID and know that they're participants. They're cooperating with South Dakota and Iowa State in the veterinary diagnostic labs to do that. And just wanted to mention there are barcode labels that are available associated with premises IDs. You can just contact any of these diagnostic labs, put those barcode labels on your diagnostic labs. It's associated with your premise. It'll eliminate a lot of your errors, and it'll improve the efficiency, and we can identify who's there. And finally, controversial issue, we're just investigating the possibility of making PRRS and or PED a reportable disease in Minnesota. The question is whether or not it's going to be good for the pig, for the industry, and for the producer. I'd be willing to talk to anybody about that. Got 1 minute. Vaccine, these are what we need. Obviously the vaccine that is going to offer consistent cross protection and marker capability, preferably. We need the ability to predict immunity. And I was at the session in Chicago, and I listened to some of the research sessions, and I must admit that I didn't understand it all, but there's progress being made. I think the money that you guys are investing at the National Pork Board level is going to a good cause. It's going to move this along. We need improved surveillance testing. But by and large, the biggest thing, the message I'd like to leave you with is I encourage you to cooperate and communicate as an industry. Thank you to all the people that invited me, my colleagues at the U, Monse in particular, and Bob Morrison, and most importantly, the supporting veterinarians and our participating producers.